Let's take an in-depth look at the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra and the Smart Home Panel 2. Welcome to DIY Volts. I'm Seth. Now I am going to go into detail talking about the inverter, the battery, and the home panel. But first I want to talk about the payback value of this equipment. So the average home in the United States is going to consume about 30 kilowatt hours in a day. My rate for power in this area is 22 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's about $9 of power every day. So if you've got 5,600 watts of solar coming into this system with a 6 kilowatt hour battery connected to the home panel 2, then you should be able to pay off this equipment in about 2.5 to 5 years. It kind of depends on your solar window and just how much power you use in a day. So basically, with about a 6-hour solar window hitting those solar panels, you should be able to get about 33 kilowatt hours of sunshine. Now I give that range of 2.5 years to 5 years for the payback because your solar window may not always be open. So whether there's a storm, clouds covering your panels, or in the winter time you may not get as much sun, and so there are some variations that will possibly make the payback a little bit longer than other times. But in general, you can expect 2.5 to 5 years and this equipment will be paid for. Now keep in mind, you have this as a backup, and so whether the power is coming in from the grid or not, you will have power in your home. So that is a peace of mind that is well worth having this kind of equipment. This is the EcoFlow Smart Home Panel 2. It is a panel box that allows you to have an external source to back up your home power in case the grid goes down. Whether that be a generator or, in my case, it's going to be the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra power station. So this box right here weighs a total of 53 pounds. It's 32 inches tall, 15 inches wide, and almost 7 inches thick. So it will fit in a typical 16-inch on-center stud wall. So let's go ahead and take a look at this unit and see what all the features are. As far as packaging goes, it was packaged well with some very thick foam, and everything seemed to survive the shipping process just fine. This is everything you get inside the kit here for this home panel. It's got a warranty card, a user manual, and a mounting template. You've got the breaker panel itself. It can be separated into two pieces, the lower portion and the upper portion. We'll take a look at this here in more detail in just a bit. A nice beefy power cord, which will connect to the power station that we're going to be using. And then of course it's got its panel and then the front door on there as well. The door will slip down onto these hinges here and here to allow the door to swing open freely. It does have a place for the seal to make a good connection on. Now if you look down here, there are 3 different inputs. You pop out these rubber stoppers and you can see that it is designed for a very specific cable, as you can see right here. We've got AC1, AC2, and AC3. There are power buttons for each of those. We've got a little light that has grid. There is a button here that you can resume or pause for your power station input. This install is neither permanent nor professional. I'm just putting it on this wall for demonstration purposes. So I've got the template here. I'm going to place this where I want it, and then I'm going to use some screws here on the bottom of this template just to simply get the spacing. Now that I have the Smart Home Panel 2 mounted to the wall, it's a bit easier to see what's going on. So let's zoom in here to the bottom. If you have between 1 and 3 of the EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra power stations, those will connect down here, and it will power this panel through the bottom using these wires here. So you've got L1, L2, neutral, and ground, and that will feed this panel like that. Now you can also connect the grid through this 100 amp max breaker spot here, or you can pull this over here and do a generator, as you can see right there. So in order to be able to use any of these slots, you've got to have breakers. So for instance, if I were to bring the grid in here, I would want one of these. This is only a 30 amp here. We'd probably want something a little bit bigger than that, but essentially it just goes in here. So snap this side and then press that in there just like that. That can slide down there and lock it in place. So currently you would not be able to turn on the grid with this down. But if I do that, then I could allow it to do that. If you look really close, there is an L2 for breaker spots 1 and 2. There's an L1 for 3 and 4, and it just rotates down the line because this panel is designed to have 240 split phase power going into it. So that being the case, if I took this 15 amp breaker, I could put it up here on L2. So I would just clip this in here. It's a nice tight fit. And so if I wanted to have the other phase of power, I would move down here to the next one and clip in down here to have L1 and 2 both used. So there we go. That's what that would look like. Now let's take a close-up look at the Delta Pro Ultra. These are all the items that come with the inverter. Of course, you've got the inverter itself. Here are the MC4 solar cables to go with this. It's got a quick start and a little bit more information here in the documentation. It has the base that have wheels, so it's got the 4 wheels that will screw in here. There is a tool to help remove cables, such as the MC4s. Here is an AC power cord, and then these little rubber stoppers here can be used if you mount 2 inverters on top of one another. Let's start here with the front of the inverter. This right here is a set of receptacles, as you can see. These are 120 volt, 20 amp, and they are the backup UPS, which means it takes 20 milliseconds for this to turn on if grid power goes down. Moving over to this one, it's another 120 volt, 20 amp, but this one is the online UPS, which means this one is run by the inverter all the time, and it has a 0 millisecond changeover time. Very cool. This right here is 120 volt, but 30 amps, and it is also always online, and basically it's run through the inverter all the time. Now lastly over here, we've got 120 volt or 240 volts. So it's a 30 amp split phase, so you can run either the 120 or the 240 off of this. Also, magnetic doors to keep them closed. However, if it is popped up all the way, it will have the door stay open, which is really fun. Now, the one thing I don't care much about is the way you open these USB ports here at the top. You got to get your fingernail under there and really pull to get that out. So kind of annoying. I get it though, it's got a seal in there to keep water out, but the first time I popped those loose, I had to use a screwdriver because they were real tight. USB type A right there, and then USB type C over here. You got 2 of each of those. Now as far as the buttons on the front go, we'll get into that here in just a bit, but AC on, power, and DC on right there. The compartment on this side is for a 4G module. I don't have one of those, so we won't be using that. Now the drawer on this side has some good stuff in it. Up here you've got an Anderson plug, and that is 12.6 volts at 30 amps, so DC output right here. On this side right here is the low PV input. So basically 30 to 150 volts DC at 15 amps. So if you've got a single solar panel, that'd be a great place to put it right there. Grounding screw, you can do a fast or a slow charge through the AC. Now for the AC input, you can do 100 to 120 volts, 15 amps, or 200 to 240 volts AC at 12.5 amps max. So you can charge through either of those. On the left side of the inverter, you simply just have a carrying handle because this unit is heavy. Now turning to the right side of the inverter, there is a handle for carrying up top and 3 different compartments. The first one over here is high PV port. I can pull this drawer down and it can be stored by pressing it into the machine. It is magnetized to keep that in place. Also on the lid of the drawer, it does have information on what's going on for this compartment. So there is a switch here which allows you to turn on or off the PV. So this is your high PV input, and so you're going to be able to do 80 volts all the way to 450 volts on this right here. So if you've got a larger solar array, that's where you would plug that in. And this switch right here allows you to plug in your PV, and then turn the switch to allow that to start charging. Moving on to this side, you've got your power in and out port. So this right here is going to allow you to take the power from this inverter to the home panel that we have installed for feeding a house with this system. So we will be connecting that here in just a bit. And lastly, over here, this one is for going down to additional batteries. Now it's time to take a look at the Delta Pro Ultra battery. Just like the other components, this was packaged very well. Had no issues with shipping. Even though the box was a little bit damaged, the battery itself is fully intact. So this thing is very heavy. I recommend picking it up with somebody else and not like I just did by myself. So be careful with it. All right, let's go ahead and take an overview of this battery and then get it installed to go ahead and get this system turned on. In the package, you get a warranty card, a cable to connect to the inverter, and of course the battery itself. On the front, it is sleek and smooth with no ports or anything. It just has the EcoFlow power station battery indicator here on the front. If we move over to this side, it does have a very large carrying handle. You can get 2 hands on that, which is convenient because this is quite heavy. So if we zoom down here, we can see there are 2 battery ports on the side and then a power button here. And if you look really close, there is an indicator for the state of charge of the battery. So just like with the inverter, these little drawers can be pulled down and slid to be hidden out of the way. A very convenient feature. So that will allow you to go down to the next battery. You also have a port which will allow you to go up to the inverter. There is some information to be seen here on the door. There are a couple cool things to note about the battery. It can charge down to -4 degrees and discharge as well. And it has an 80 to 116 volt input with an output of up to 8,600 watts. The back of the battery looks just like the front, and the side over here has some decorative paneling plus a handle up here for carrying. Now, if you look at the cable, it is going to be specific to which direction it goes. So for instance, if I open up this right here, you'll see that there is a notch cut out for this portion of the connection. So it won't fit in this direction. However, if I simply flip the cable over, it will fit in this direction. So keep that in mind that the cable does have to be in the right orientation. The base comes with some plastic wheels that I'm going to screw into position here. One cool thing about these caster wheels is they don't spin around or roll whenever they are locked. So if I unlock them, they will spin around in a circle and also allow the wheel to freely spin. But if I'm going to be keeping this locked down on the floor, I don't want it rolling around in either direction. So got the base done. Now it's time to get the battery on here. Now with the battery in position, it's time to put the inverter up here as well. This one's not quite as heavy, but still heavy enough. Now obviously this is meant to be on the floor, but for a demonstration I've got it up here on my table, and I'll be moving it down later whenever I actually have this in use, but much easier to see up here. One feature of the Delta Pro Ultra that is very well thought out and well engineered is the cable that goes from the battery to the inverter. So if you open up these little drawers here and look at the cable, it is designed to be just the perfect length to fit here. There's not a 3-foot cable looping around to get from battery to inverter. So this right here is a game changer for space savings. So like I said, there is a specific direction that this has to go in, and I believe I've got it in the wrong direction. So flip this over and this can snap together. And that is the connection between battery and inverter. I'm going to press and hold the power button on the battery. Looks like it has 2 battery bubbles here. Also, it shows 30% up here on the display. 4 days, 22 hours, 47 minutes at this current state with nothing running, It just simply is turned on. As you can see, no input, no output. Now that I have the Delta Pro Ultra completely set up, let's do some testing. So first of all, we learned earlier that this port over here is the UPS backup. So it will run typical 120 volt receptacle, and if you pull the power plug from either solar or from AC, it will have just the slightest little blink because it's a 20 millisecond backup there, versus this one over here, which will run through the inverter all the time, and it's a 0 millisecond UPS backup. So either one of those will work fine for this little test here. I've got a light panel. It's going to run at around 200 watts. And let's go ahead and plug this up to one of the AC ports here. And we'll have to turn on the AC output here. Go ahead and click that. It is showing on. And let's see. There we go. That light has just kicked on. Let me bring you in so you can see that 200 watts consumption. Output 231 watts. Now I will note that this light is sensitive to pure sine wave versus modified sine wave, and I have to say that is a very clean, clear output. No flicker whatsoever on that light. So very, very good. All right, well, 60 hertz is indicated up here in the corner, has the output, and it will run this for 6 hours, 23 minutes, based on 30% of the battery here. The Delta Pro Ultra boasts a maximum output AC power of 7,800 watts, which is quite ridiculous. So I've got 2 heat guns, a heater, and that light. We're going to turn all these on at the same time and see what the output is. I'm guessing it's going to be somewhere around over 5,000 watts. So that should give us a good idea of how this is going to perform. All right, let me go ahead and turn on the AC here. That light is going to turn on right away. Let's go ahead and turn on this heater, max at setting number 3. We now have 1,600 watts going out. Now let me see if I can turn on these heat guns and show you this output as well. All right, heat number 1, maximum. There we go, 3,000 watts. Heat number 2, maximum. All right, there we go, 4,200 watts. AC output works remarkably well. Let's try out the DC. I'm going to press the DC button here, and that should turn on the output. So let's go ahead and open up this USB Type-C and see if I can get to that. So I've got a USB-C to C cable. If I plug that up, I should be able to plug up my phone. Let's plug up the cell phone and see if it starts charging. Yep, there we go. It is now charging from the USB-C. And now I'm going to use the other side, which is USB-A. Plug this cable up. And then I just got this little speaker here that will allow us to see that it's working. Hopefully you can see that little red light right there, that it is working. We've got an output of 13 watts. One nice thing is on the display here, it shows USB-C and the USB-A are both being used at the moment. So now that we've seen output from the Delta Pro Ultra, let's see about charging this unit from solar and from AC power. If I open up this little drawer over here, I can use the included power cable to charge this. Currently I have this set to slow charge. We'll plug this up here and see what we get. Looks like it's hovering somewhere around 600 watts input. It's going to take 9 hours to charge this to 100%. Now I'm not sure how this is going to work, but let's flip over to fast charge and see what's going to happen here. All right, 1,700 watts, 300, 900, 13, almost 3 hours versus 9 hours is the difference from this point right here. So very nice, good to see that. While I have the unit plugged up to AC power, let's test out the 20 millisecond backup UPS versus the always on line. To do that, I've got my light panel once again. So the thought is we will see a slight flicker whenever I pull the AC power out of this side, but not this side. So I'm gonna turn on the AC power, click that on, and now if I plug this up, we should see the light turn on. There we go. Now when I unplug this, we should not see a flicker at all. Yeah, no flicker at all. Okay, let me plug this back up real quick. I'm gonna plug this up. All right, once again, the light is on. Now, when I pull the power, we should see a slight flicker on this light. So here we go. Yep, cool. So that's exactly what we expect to see. This is always online UPS. This one has a 20 millisecond or one quick flicker, if you will. So, all right, that is working as advertised. Now to test out the low voltage PV input. I just connected a single 250 watt solar panel. You can see it's got a little over 200 watts coming in. This panel is a 38 volt panel, and it's just setting up in the sun there to show that the low voltage solar charging does work. To do that, I've simply just plugged up the cable here to the low PV input. It's a 30 to 150 volt DC, 15 amp max. And once the solar plug is plugged in, you just turn this knob here to turn on the PV, and it will begin to charge. So at this current rate, it would take a day to charge up to 100%. And so adding more solar panels would make a big difference on charging up this unit. Now we see the potential of plugging appliances directly into the power station receptacles, but to fully utilize the potential of this home backup system, it needs to be plugged up to a whole house home panel like the one behind me here. So in order to do that, we have to use that giant cable that was shipped with this power station. And that's going to go from the inverter to one of the input ports over here on this home panel. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, as you watch this next part, remember that I have wired up this home panel for demonstration purposes only. It's not a legal or official install, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. The middle port here on the inverter is where the output to the house home panel is going to be. I'm going to close that and then get the cable attached. So this needs to go down like this and push it till it snaps. And now I'm going to take this cable over to the home panel. Now the home panel can accept up to 3 of these systems. I'm just going to be installing one here. So I'm going to open up the rubber stopper for number 1, and then I'm going to plug this into the home panel. The EcoFlow home panel can accept 2 different inputs and use one of them at a time. So for instance, just for a placeholder, I put this 30 amp breaker in here. You can put a bigger one in there to feed your home. And then of course you've got all of your circuits put in here. I just have these 2 for this demonstration. But the other input, of course, is down here for your power stations. Whenever I connected the Delta Pro Ultra to the Home Panel 2, it threw an error up here on the screen that said 035. After contacting support, they said that I had to update the Home Panel 2 before it would talk to the power station. And so without you, I installed the EcoFlow app, and I was able to get both this updated and this. I actually had 2 firmware to update on the home panel. So now that I have that all fixed and ready to go, let's go ahead and run through what it looks like to see the power station and the home panel working together, but also grid power as well. So you may notice that I have a cord going up here. Because I'm in an off-grid shed, I have a power station that is supplying grid power, and then the Delta Pro Ultra that will be able to work as soon as the grid power is lost. So let's jump into all that and I'll show you how it works. I've just turned on the grid power to the home panel. It takes a few seconds for this to initiate, and you can hear it kind of make some clicks as it's turning on. So what's going to happen is grid power is coming through this cable here, and it is feeding the system through this 30 amp breaker. And then I have these 2 right here, which will feed these receptacles over here. And we'll be able to see this work with this light right down here. So let me go ahead and make sure this unit is turned on by pushing the resume power here. As you can see, this light immediately turns on down here. This light is being run completely by the grid power. As you can see, the light here indicating grid has just turned on. Now normally the grid would be able to charge the power station, but because like I said, I'm just using a power station, it's not actual grid power. So it may throw an error here in just a moment. But what I wanted to show you, there you go, unable to charge the power station, but don't worry about that. So check this out though. As soon as I turn off grid power right here, so it's going to turn off the grid, as you can see right here, and then it's going to use the power station now to back up and run our light circuit in. There you go. It just turned on. So now if we go over here, we should be able to see an output. There we go. 216 watts to run that light. So just as you would expect, it has a backup feature. So if you lose the grid power in your home, the Delta Ultra Pro will kick on. And now let's show how the grid power comes back on again. Turn that on. It should read that grid has returned. It will turn off the Delta Pro Ultra, and the system will swap back over to grid. The grid light has just come back on. The system has changed back over to working with the grid once again, and the power station has stopped. As you can see, there's a bit of a delay. When you lose grid power, it takes a couple of seconds for the Delta Pro Ultra to kick in, which is fine because it will be able to run a lot of power once it is turned on. Now, if you wanted to have that emergency power that didn't cause a blink or a flicker, you would need to use those always-on backup UPS outlets that I showed you before. So let me go ahead and load up the app so you can kind of see what's going on here with some numbers. So I did install the app without you. You have to kind of go through and set up your username and all of that. But once it's installed, you can click on to either the power station or the smart home panel. So first of all, let's click on the smart home. Now there are a few things that aren't mentioned in the user manual that you have to work with, and that's turning on these breakers. So you've got 1 through 12, and they're off initially. As you can see here on the home screen of the home panel, it's got grid power going into the breaker panel and then out to the home, 220 watts. And so that's what's being passed through this panel currently from the grid. Now up here at the top, I can click on the Circuits tab, and you can see I've got circuits 1, 2, and 3 active. If I click on that, I could push this power button here and turn them off. So this was what was kind of confusing at first. I had to go in here and turn these on because by default they are off. So if you've got your home panel hooked up and nothing's happening, go in here and turn these on and you should have output. So that's also nice to know if you're away from home and you want to turn something off in your house. You can go into the app and turn those circuits off and not worry about whether or not you left the stove on at the house. So it can be quite handy there. All right, but as you can see, it's going from grid to the house. So let's go ahead and turn off the grid power. All right, in the app you see that grid has stopped. Let's see what happens here in a moment when the power station kicks on and does a backup to the house panel. We do have to go in here to the power station and make sure this is turned on. I forgot to mention that. There we go. You can see down here at the bottom it says using battery power, and it's got a green line going up showing that 215 watts from the power station is now being sent to the home panel to go into that light circuit that I've got representing my house. Now that you've seen the Delta Pro Ultra and the Home Panel 2 in action, let's talk about the practical numbers that this can supply to your home. So the output on the Delta Pro Ultra is 7,200 watts. It can do split phase AC, which is 120 volts or 240 volts. So it is sending 240 volts into the home panel 2, which means this circuit here is 120 volts and this one is 120 volts, but they're not on the same phase. So it's split phase, so you can have 240 volt or 120 volt. Now, what can 7,200 watts operate in your home? For my house, I have a dryer that operates at 4,000 watts. My well pump operates at 1,000. My refrigerator kicks on at 700 watts. Hair dryer could be 1,000 watts. So all of those things could run off of this power station at any given time. So you can see that there is great potential to run the majority of your home on this power station. Now let's say you want to run the entire house off of the Delta Pro Ultra. You'd have to have at least 2 of them, because let's say you had your cooking stove with all 4 burners and the oven on. That's about 5,000 watts. And then you turned on your dryer. Well, that's 4,000 watts. Now we've exceeded the 7,200 watts that this is capable of. That's the beauty of having these additional spaces down here to add more of these power stations. If you were to have 2 of the Delta Pro Ultras, you would have the potential to have 14.4 kilowatt output, which is significant power. At 7,200 watts, this is even able to start a 3-ton central air conditioner. I hope you found the information in this video to be helpful. If you did, leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. If you would like to pick up a EcoFlow Delta Pro Ultra or the Smart Home Panel 2, then I'll have links to that in the description down below. Now, one thing I did not cover in this video is the EV charger, so you can also find a link to that down below. And if you want to really improve your payback time, then start charging your EV with one of these systems and you'll be impressed with the payback time. I'm Seth with DIY Volts, and I will see you in the next video.